One thing about trying to to recruit or recruit companies to an area, first of all, the skill set of the workers, there have to be things done to meet the needs of the manufacturers or the companies. At ICC, we have done that. We have worked every opportunity we have with a company to find out what they need in order to have the work skills that's needed for these companies. Education is one of the most important things when it comes to bringing a company to your community. The other one is transportation for the workers to go from home to work. A lot of people do not have transportation to jobs. I've found over the years, but being on the city council and the county board and working in transportation and going out for companies, I've talked to leaderships in the chamber here to say, well, what do you think are needed for this area, and worked on the Workforce Development Committee. I'm on that board also. And so I meet all the time about developing workers and developing needs of businesses and the reason they come to any city. So I've been involved in that and will continue to be involved, because we can say we need 1,000 jobs, but if we don't have skilled trades, skilled people, we will lose those jobs every time. So that's something that I'm working on every day, trying to make sure that Illinois Central College is relevant. The President of the United States have earmarked a lot of money for education, and also the state, I think, is open to make sure that we develop the people and the workers to be able to function in these new opportunities. And that stops companies from coming in some cases. But we always must continue to fight for what we need here in the Peoria area. We have to fight for it.
Karen, thanks for being bold enough to ask the first question. I think it's a very good one from a congressional level. We've got to level the playing field. We've got an uneven playing field when it comes to exports. So manufacturing is our #1 employer in our region, okay? So rather than exporting jobs, we need to make sure we're exporting goods. So what I would propose, and I've actually proposed this on day one when I announced my campaign, is that we have incentive to create manufacturing jobs through the tax structure. We have disincentive penalties for exporting jobs. So there has to be incentives for what we call reshoring, bringing those jobs back home, and penalties for taking jobs overseas. And that's what I've talked about, leveling the playing field. In our district, we're uniquely geographically situated. We have Rockford to the north, we have Peoria here, and we have the Quad Cities to the west. So we have branded that in our campaign the manufacturing triangle. The other bit of good news, in addition to what David talked about, is just within the last couple weeks, the Chrysler plant in the north part of our district announced that they're adding a third shift to build the Dodge Dart. That's good news. So they're adding jobs. Dave also addressed that we need to make sure that we have training in place to fill more of those technical jobs. What I would say as far as this manufacturing triangle, we've got manufacturing in place. We have the labor organizations that are strong. We have the infrastructure that's in place. And we have the Midwestern work ethic that cannot be beat. So I believe that we have all the ingredients. We just have to make sure that we have a tax structure that honors creating jobs, manufacturing jobs, and penalizes taking those jobs overseas. And I think that's how you make that happen. Exactly, and you know what? And we do have to work together. So the people at this table here, when hopefully I'm elected to Congress, and if Dave or Mr. Polk are elected to the state Senate, we got to work together. It's the state, the national, and the local level working together.
Karen, first off, keep fighting the good fight. stay in school. I know it's hard, but I promise it pays off, and we need to educate as many people as possible, especially young people like yourself, so keep fighting the good fight. Now, I agree with just about everything Sherry said. You know, we're both Democrats, so we're going to probably agree a little bit here and there. But I also want us to create new manufacturing jobs for this area with tax incentives, but they need to be for technology that's going to carry us into the future. Renewable energy sources, biodiesels, wind power. And then this wind power, when we create these turbines, let's create incentives to bring jobs here to our district with fair tax breaks because they're producing jobs that are going to carry us into the future. And you know what? That's my answer for you. Create new jobs, tax incentives, but jobs that are going to carry us into the future with renewable energy sources.
Let me start off by saying there are a lot of folks who try to put a negative spin on everything with Caterpillar. And no, it's not a good thing that that's going to North Carolina, those 1,200 jobs. But let's not forget, Caterpillar is also investing over $800 million in East Peoria to upgrade their facilities there that are going to add jobs. Caterpillar is spending over $50 million in conjunction with the county down here on the riverfront to add their new visitors center. Caterpillar is anchored here. They do address some very specific things, issues that they have with the state, but they also were very, very complimentary of the package that, as Senator Kaler pointed out, the county took the lead on when we came to talk with them about what we could do. Senator Kaler was prepared to do certain things in Springfield. We here at the county were prepared to do certain things to try and attract those jobs up to the Mossville facility. And part of why that works is because Peoria County has made economic development one of our key focuses. We have tried to make sure that it's done on a regional basis. I know there were probably some people who cringed when I said, oh, they're investing in East Peoria. Well, you know what? To the rest of the world, the whole Peoria area just looks like one area. And if we build, if a factory goes up or is expanded in East Peoria, there are people in Peoria that'll work there. When we build a museum here in Peoria, people from East Peoria are going to come here. It's a regional thing. We have to get outside of the parochial us versus them with the river. And that's one of the things Peoria County's been working on, is making that more regional. We also have been working at not just having expansion for expansion's sake, but making sure we reach out to folks that are traditionally disadvantaged. The county sent out a press release today announcing a series of MBE, of Minority Business Enterprise workshops that are going to be hosted by the Minority Business Committee of the County Board, where we're going to bring in county board members, folks from the county's economic development group and Heartland Partnership to help talk with folks about what sorts of things we can be doing. We're investing in a minority business incubator with some HUD funds that we have managed to repurpose. We are working on investing in heritage neighborhoods, we like to call it, leveraging all the money that we get from things like lead abatement to work with the city on improving housing stock, because you need to have healthy community if you're going to have those workers that we were talking about to fill those factory jobs. So there's a lot of things that are going on, and it is a cooperation, as Don said, as others have said, all the way from the city and the county to the state to the feds.
Okay, thank you, Alan. Rick?
Just to piggyback on all that, I think keeping our community attractive is also important. So when these companies do look at us, it's somewhere that they feel comfortable to send their employees to live. So on top of all this, I think education is key, because people are going to be moving here raising families. So getting our education up and in the right direction is key, and also things like crime and stuff like that, and just making sure that we keep Peoria and Peoria County and the whole state looking attractive to businesses.
Thank you.
I'm Ernestine Jackson. I do have a question for the judicial candidates. I guess, first of all, I never think that judicial candidates ought to be totally affiliated with a political party, because I want you to make decisions that are not Republican or Democrat. I want you to make fair decisions. And I guess I'd like to hear your comment on standing up and saying I'm a Republican, if you're going to make decisions based on you being a Republican or based on the facts. That's my first one. Secondly, I'd like to address this directly to Mr. Is it Hoppick? I just read your form and it said that you're a conservative Christian, and I think everybody in this room that are Christian are conservative in many ways. But conservatism means different things to different people. So I guess I need you to explain what it means when you say I'm a conservative Christian, because I also saw right up above that you're a member of the Heritage Foundation. And that frightens me because so many racial comments have come from that group, not only on a national level, but on all levels. So I guess I would like for you to explain your affiliation with the group that consistently makes racial comments and push a racial issue with the congressmen that come before them and speak. So I'd just like for you to address those two issues for me after you address the issue about the making decisions on the bench.
I don't believe I did say I would make a decision based as a Republican. I identified myself as a conservative Christian, and I am a Republican. I'm a conservative Republican. But I also pointed out to everybody that I've been a prosecutor and a defense attorney. When I was a prosecutor, I was so aggressive that defense attorneys never thought I could be a defense attorney. But my ethical obligation was to represent the people of the state of Illinois to the best of my ability. And that's exactly what I did. They were entitled to my best. When I switched and became a defense attorney, now there are prosecutors who can't believe I was ever a prosecutor because I'm so vigorous in the defense I present. But as a defense attorney, my ethical obligation is to present the best possible defense within the rules to my client. As a judge, I will do the same thing, but my obligation will change once again. My obligation will be to follow the law, to act impartially, and when I point out about being conservative, by that I mean exercise judicial restraint. There are a couple different judicial philosophies that people think of, even if they don't know the specific terminology, they're probably aware of. People have heard about the Constitution being an ever-living, ever-breathing document. And then there's the judicial philosophy of originalists, like Justice Scalia, Justice Thomas, Chief Justice John Roberts, and Justice Sam Alito. And they would say, and I would agree with them, that the Constitution is a contract between the government and the American people. If it's within one of the 7 articles of the Constitution, or one of the 27 amendments, or consistent with the Founding Fathers' original intent, then it's permissible. If it's not consistent, then it's not permissible.
So are you suggesting we should go back to slavery as well?
No.
Well, that's in the original document.
So is the 13th, 14th, and 15th
That
Amendment.
came later.
Which is why I pointed out, Mr. Jackson, and you know, I pointed out that originalists take all 7 articles of the Constitution and the amendments. So, no, you're aware of the 13th, 14th, and 15th Amendment. Now, I think you asked what it meant to me to be a conservative Christian. Well, what it means to me is, first and foremost, Jesus Christ is my Lord and Savior. I make no apologies for that, and I don't hide my faith. I've had people criticize me for pointing out that I am a Christian. I've been called a zealot. As I would point out to some people, would that it be so. I have never had my faith tested in such a way. I don't believe that I am a zealot. My wife and daughter are Catholic. I attend St. Pat's, but I'm an evangelical Christian, so I go to Bethany Community. I don't know that a zealot would take that same position, but I've done that for years, long before I was running for judicial office. Now, what does it mean to be a conservative Christian? Well, it means that I believe the Bible is God's word to me. I don't get to read the Bible how I want it to, say what I want it to say. So I wouldn't agree with you that everyone in here reads the Bible that way or is a conservative. I think some people read the Bible and they pick out particular passages. And they then try to extrapolate their faith from that. I don't believe that's appropriate. It may make my life a lot easier if I could just pick out certain passages that work best for me. But then I wouldn't be being faithful to God. So, now, if the Heritage Foundation, you said racial comments. Well, I will answer any question you have, but I'm unaware of the Heritage Foundation, which is a think tank, a conservative think tank. I'm unaware of them making any racially charged statements. So, I don't know everything, and perhaps you know more than I do, but I'm not aware of the Heritage Foundation being involved in any controversy of racial comments whatsoever.
Our system requires that we select a party, and our system also requires that as a judge, you are fair and impartial, which makes this very difficult to evaluate. I'm proud to tell you that I have support of both the state's attorneys, public defenders, plaintiffs' attorneys, and the defense bar. And I can tell you that when they have evaluated me, they have been satisfied with my ability to be fair and impartial in the cases that I decide. Thank you.
As an Illinois state resident, to be frank, it's an embarrassment and it hurts when you look at our state today. The financial situation and the historical situation with our governors really is not something acceptable from the resident. As you look at going down to Springfield, what do you see need be done to actually change the environment? I read a lot of comments, but if you look at the environment from a citizen's viewpoint, nothing seems to change. I'd like to live in a state that I'm proud of.
I've been involved with government a long time, and people always say that they want change in how government is run, but a lot of times they elect the same people over and over again. So you can't get change what you need unless you start changing the people you elected. I think that a lot of things that is being done, by the governor, how we address that, how we address the attitude of excellence, how we fight for the things that the citizens and voters believe in. That's how you decide, first of all, how things can change. You cannot continue electing the same people over and over and expect change to happen. New attitudes, new ideals, being creative, working hard for men and women, working men and women, targeting what you believe in, targeting what solve and help people, and find out what the people want too. Reach out to the people. Listen to the people. They'll tell you what they want, and they're the ones that you have to follow their ideas, what they think, how they feel, but you cannot continue electing the same people and think that you're going to find change.
There's probably two answers to that, Al. I mean, on one hand, the perception of Illinois is that things are awful. Now, I would maintain that they're not as bad as folks like to make out. There's a lot of work to do. Don't get me wrong. But we've had more reform probably in the last 3 or 4 years than this state has experienced in a long, long time. And part of it, most of it, is really, I think, driven by the fact that we've had the biggest recession that we've had really since the Great Depression. If you want to take the issue of pensions, there's 3 big areas that run the state budget. You've got Medicaid, healthcare, you've got pensions, and you've got education. Those make up 80% of the state budget. When the economy went in the tank, we lost millions and millions of dollars in terms of revenues because the state is dependent on 2 things. One is sales tax and one is income tax. And we just quite frankly didn't have the money to spend on the programs that people were used to. Our Medicaid rolls, we're going to have to cut, the governor's already calling for $2 billion in Medicaid cuts. You know, talk about health care, Karen. I mean, I don't know how we do that. I mean, Medicaid is what folks depend upon for primary health care for their children and for seniors. I mean, that's how we keep seniors in nursing home facilities. So there's that part of Illinois that is a mess just because we haven't climbed out of this recession. There's also a part of Illinois which, I mean, let's face it, we had the last two governors, you know, one's in prison and one's going to prison. That's an embarrassment. One of my votes when we started 2009 was to vote to throw Governor Blagojevich out of office. That was a low point of the state. But you know what? We took care of the problem. And since then, I have seen that there is a will to change and there is movement on change. And it's not all been easy and it's not all been things I've agreed with. But if you look at the fact that we've had a Medicaid reform bill, we've had an education reform bill, we've had a workers' comp reform bill, we've had government ethics reform, and people can argue about whether that's enough, whether it's too much and all that, but there is a definite will right now that we have got to change how we've done business because we can't continue to do that. The one change, and this may be a no-brainer, I mean, especially coming from Caterpillar, you'll say, well, how come they didn't do that before? But this last year, as the first year, we've changed the budgeting process to say we're going to first of all start with the amount of revenues that we know are coming in, and then we're going to budget according to outcomes. What do we expect? And we're doing it line by line, and actually had cooperation, and they agreed on a budget. The Senate, we did not. And so we'll look back at it this year, but there's been a lot of things where we've had good bipartisan support. We passed, here's a fact that I'm very proud of in Illinois. In 2009, all the states combined throughout the country passed a total of $39 billion for public works projects or capital bill. And this is very necessary, you know, following on the heels of what Obama did to get the economy stimulated, that we had to do our own part within the states. So the whole country did $39 billion of capital bills. In Illinois, we did $31 billion of that. In the midst of the recession, we stood up and we said, jobs and infrastructure is important, and we did it as a bipartisan effort. It was passed with overwhelming Republican and Democrat support. That was pretty big. Don, I know you, let me just take 1 second. You know, the one piece of reform that we just passed that you didn't hear anything about because it was done in a bipartisan way was the unemployment insurance reform. How many have heard about the unemployment insurance reform? Yeah, because you pay attention to it. But you know what? That was a big piece of legislation and nobody wrote about it because we weren't standing up screaming about it.
If you don't mind, I'd like to address that as well, sir. And the way I interpret your question is one about integrity, if it's okay if I address it that way. And so I'm going to relate it to a story. It was the very first day I walked door to door collecting signatures for our petitions. You know, we all had to get signatures on our petitions. It was the very first house I went to. It was right down the street from our campaign headquarters. And a gentleman answered the door. He invited me in. And his wife was sitting on a couch with a walker, and she has multiple sclerosis. And she smiled. She was very engaging. He walked over and showed me the medals that were hanging on his wall. They were medals from when he served in Vietnam. He told me that he has some ailments as a result of serving our country, and that he had lost his job. He had worked at the Rock Island Arsenal. And I spent about 10 minutes talking to the family, and they told me that they weren't getting relief, the help that they needed, although they had reached out to our congressman. And he asked for my help, and I said, you know, if I'm elected, I will be in a position to help you. And the last thing he said to me when I left was, don't forget us when you're elected. And, you know, and I take your question as, you know, people who end up being career politicians or who have forgotten where they've come from. And, you know, I'm proud to say I'm not a career politician. I've been elected to 2 terms on the city council, but I'm a working mother. My husband and I started our careers as shift workers. I'm the granddaughter of a union president and a hog farmer. My husband's father didn't graduate 8th grade. And, you know, we have had some success in our life, but it's because of hard work and because we haven't forgotten where we've come from. And I can tell you that if I'm fortunate enough to be elected, you know, I would pledge to you in this room and any place I go, I'm not going to forget where I came from. It's our roots. We've never forgotten that. And I think that gets to the point of integrity. People who have forgotten where they've come from, forgotten about helping people. And there's a saying, and I can't even tell you the original person who said this. Maybe my brother-in-law might be able to tell me, but it's people don't care how much you know until they know how much you care. And I think that's, you know, something where, you know, if those of us in public service have to make sure that we care. So I appreciate your question.
You know, if you want a true democracy, let the middle class and the working class control the government. We need to elect working class individuals so they can represent the working class. Now, to bring back integrity and to bring back those types of representatives that are going to work for all of you, the voters need to pay attention to who's funding campaigns, who is contributing money to these candidates. Pay attention to that, and you're going to see who the real candidates are that are going to represent your needs and those that might represent special interests. There's money coming into primaries right here in District 17 for people who support partial birth abortions. Pay attention to that. Find out look at the money trail. That'll tell you what kind of candidate you're going to be getting. But the bottom line, if you want a true democracy, let the working class rule.
Thank you.